And do you know what else you can never read when you've got polarised glasses on?
What's that then?
The bloody notice boards at airports. It's just completely black.
Why are you wearing sunglasses in an airport?
Because I lost my real glasses, so I got prescription sunglasses, so I have to wear them indoors. I even sit at home watching the telly with my sunglasses.
Well, one of those muppets that constantly wear sunglasses as if they're too important to be seen.
Welcome to another episode of Boat Nuts, the podcast about all things boaty. This is Boat Nut number 1, Hugo Andreae, editor of Motorboat and Yachting magazine, and I'm Alex Smith, Boat Nut number 2, deputy editor of that same magazine. Now, Hugo, where are we today?
We are down at Swanwick Marina again, on board this rather fine Azimuth Magellano 60. It's a kind of contemporary style modern trawler yacht, and this particular one retails normally at £2.7 million. This one here on sale currently at 2.15 million. So something of a bargain, I feel. Yeah,
it's tremendous value, even the original price, to be honest with you. It's a lovely boat, isn't it?
Certainly is.
But we're not going to be talking about this particular boat today. Our boat of the day, like last week, in fact, is going to be several boats because we recently attended the Southampton Boat Show and we're going to pick our favourite boats from that event.
Yeah, not quite so many world premieres there, but still a really interesting selection of boats and a handful of really exciting new ones.
Yes, indeed. And then our product of the week is going to be sunglasses, marine sunglasses. And there's actually a lot more to talk about there than you might imagine.
Yeah, I rather wish I was wearing a pair at the moment.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. And our issue of the week, what's that? It's hulls, isn't it?
Hull types, absolutely. Displacement, semi-displacement, planing.
Yeah, we're going to try to explain what each is, explain a few applications.
Yeah, some of the pros and cons.
Boats, and hopefully get to some sort of consensus about which suits who the best.
Yeah, and there's some interesting developments going on there as well with sort of things like fast displacement hulls and so on. So plenty to talk about.
Cool, let's go and have a chat about that now.
Let's get stuck in.
Right then, to our boats of this week, which we found at the Southampton Boat Show. Now, I've got to say, Hugo, when I walked into the Southampton Boat Show, I had a look about and I thought, wow, this is a bit small.
Yeah, they've sort of compressed it all into a slightly smaller area, but I didn't think that was too bad, actually, because it made the whole show feel a little bit busier and more together and more compact, and I quite liked it. It felt like it was just a slightly more concentrated rather than sort of straggling out past sort of hot tubs and meaningless bits of outdoor furniture and things. I like a proper boat show round the marina, mainly based on the water.
There were plenty of bits of meaningless furniture. What are you on about? There were like garden sheds and hot tubs and all sorts.
Well, it just somehow felt a bit more contained.
Okay. Well, we 60 seconds in and we've already had this agreement. I thought it was not the most auspicious start when I walked into that show. We saw the parameters of it compared to the last few years. But then I saw some boats and I cheered the hell up.
Yeah, well, it was a nice sort of selection, wasn't it?
It was. You don't get all the big, high-budget world debuts that you get at Cannes.
Yeah.
And you don't get the scale you get at Dusseldorf, of course, but it's a nice festival sort of atmosphere. And one of the boats I saw early on, the Dutchy 25, I know you saw that too.
I did, and that's a proper homegrown British brand.
Yeah, built by Cockwells, isn't it?
By Cockwells down in Cornwall. And a really nice little take on it. It's the smallest boat they've done so far. But it retains all that lovely Cockwellsness, which for those who don't know, they're a lovely, proper old school boat builder, a lot of handcrafted wood on board. It is in fact a composite hull, but it's got this lovely hand built interior. And the nice thing about the 25 is it's the first boat they've done with outboard power, but because of that, it's considerably lighter. So the whole thing is trailable. It's the first boat they built that you can put on a road trailer and tow anywhere around the country or indeed overseas.
Yeah, it transforms the potential applications, doesn't
it?
Yeah,
it just means with a small boat like that, you can go anywhere you can get to in a car effectively and launch the boat. You can take your boat with you. But it's got all those lovely little details. The woodwork is exceptional. You've got a proper little convertible bed downstairs, convertible dinette that converts into a bed. Got a little galley, got a little heads compartment, really nice sociable cockpit, plenty of seating, and all those lovely little sort of touch points that you get from a Cockwells boat, drawers that are properly made of slid joinery.
Exactly that. There's been, so some boats I've loved from big, well-known brands, quite premium ones, and you look behind the scenes, you look in the drawers and the cupboards and stuff, and it generally doesn't take long to find the point where they thought, a simple little
That's as
butt
far
joint.
as deep as we need to go.
Glue and screw and a little plastic plug or off-the-shelf catch, and it's not the same with this
No,
boat,
it's completely the opposite. The further you dig, the better the more nice little points you discover.
You're right. I found myself opening drawers and looking at the beautiful joints in solid oak, as you say, they'd engineered in there.
And in fact, there's, the little fiddles for all the cups and just nice little touch points that make you feel I've got something a little bit special. And price-wise, it's not that different.
Not unattainable, is it?
An Axopar. I think the starting price is about 189,000.
Is that with the 140?
Yeah, I think that's with the 140. I'm told that you can probably fit up to about 200 horsepower. It's not a quick boat, but it'll certainly do 20 knots, maybe 25 with a bigger engine. But that's not really why you buy it. You don't buy it for the pace. You buy it because it looks lovely, it feels lovely, it makes you feel a bit special.
It does.
It's handmade in Britain.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be next to 14 others of them when you come down to any marina.
Exactly that. So that was a very pleasing boat. That put a smile on both our faces, I think, didn't it?
Definitely.
And then I saw something quite contrasting, an Ockelbo 25 cabin. You had a look at that too, did you?
That could barely be more different.
Yeah.
Properly focused boat.
That's right. Built by the Swedish company Anytech at their Latvian factory. And Anytech has a history in aluminium boats. I've seen them out in Finland a few times, but I never really concentrated on testing any because I knew that at the time they weren't imported into the UK. But Anytech has built this Ockelbo. Ockelbo is, of course, owned by Anytech.
Yeah. And Anytech is kind of the performance brand, and Ockelbo are slightly more sort of adventure, rough, tough kind of.
Yeah, 100%. All
less fancy.
Aluminium topsides, aluminium hull. And a kind of pilot house configuration, this flagship. And I was really impressed with it, weren't you?
I thought it was a really strong looking package. It's one of those boats that sort of speaks to you about its serious intent. There's a lot of talk about adventure boats, but there's something about an aluminium one, unfinished aluminium. It's super hard wearing. It's super robust. You could just go through pretty much anything in that and you'll still survive.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any of the sort of creaking and groaning that you get from a lightweight composite boat.
That's right. And actually they fitted it out pretty well to mitigate any sense of noise that you tend to get from aluminium, with carpeting and matting in the storage spaces and rubber gaskets on the lips of the storage spaces and so on. Plenty of fabrics, excuse me, on the inside of the pilot house. It's a quality fit out, quality build. And I like the design as well, actually, because generally I like walk around decks with the pilot house boat. I know you do too. It's so practical. 25, 26 foot. They've used that entire 8 foot 4 inch beam for the pilot house. There's little side decks. So you can get round, and there are grab rails on top of the roof to accommodate that. But they've used loads of volume inside, lovely big windows, kind of frameless. They used a 2-part opening door to get out onto the bow deck. So you in terms of...
It's quite cool, isn't it? It sort of pops up. It all looks a bit James Bond style, the way it lifts up.
Tops up and the bottom opens out. So you can instinctively, when I walk onto the foredeck on a small boat, I stoop. You don't need to. As a 6'2". What are you, 6 foot?
The only... I'm 6'1" or something.
No, you don't have to stoop at all when you come out.
No, but the only downside I think about that hinge design is that I don't think you can leave it open at high speed.
No, beyond 10 knots you've got to shut it. And the problem with that, actually, while we talk about it, is the fact you can't have one open and the other closed. So you can't shut the top as you have to over 10 knots and leave the bottom door open for ventilation. All closed or all open. So essentially, when you're underway, it's all closed. And actually, the same... realistically for the back door in that pilot house, you've got to have that shut underway, because if you don't, then it releases from its magnetic catch. As you know, I caught a thumb in the hole in the hinge side when that swung closed on me. So essentially you have to close the pilot house off underway, but you've got natural air ventilation from vents that run through the forward part of the superstructure.
Right. Plus, so it doesn't feel too stuffy.
No, and you can spec it with side windows as well. And actually...
genuine all year round boat, isn't it? You can use it any season you like, any weather.
Absolutely you can. And apparently you can spec it up. How high can you spec it with the engine? I mean, have a little look. The one at the show that had a 300, I think that's good for around about 44 knots. But
which is plenty, really, isn't it?
Well, they're saying it's rated now to 425, so you can get best part of 55 knots out of that. I think that's too much, because it only weighs 1,800 kilos.
Oh, my goodness.
Without the engine. So it's lightweight, so it's going to just zing like a wasp. But
money, is it?
Yeah, well,
relatively attainable?
from 106 grand. But the show boat all in was 105 grand. You know, unless you buy that.
I think that's quite a lot of boat for the money. You know, again, comparing it to the usual run-of-the-mill Axopar type thing.
So do I. And the fact they've designed it, that nice big roof structure, because you've got a full beam pilot house, they've designed that so that you can fit a Thule, was it Tool? You know, the
oh, I know. I know how you pronounce that.
The Thule brand. Thule.
Something.
Well, anyway, they do a tent box, and you can stick that up on the roof. You got a double cabin up there, brilliant. And you can also convert the furniture in the pilot house. You got a 4-berth boat.
No,
you're limited in some regards, obviously, but that's quite exciting.
And no heads compartment.
Well, you can have a heads compartment if you spec it on the starboard side at the aft end, or you can have a little toilet under a step to enter. But so it's a versatile boat. You do need to play around with the.
It's quite
with
basic.
the options.
I think that's sort of the appeal of it, isn't it? It's basic, no nonsense design.
Right, is that?
Yeah, something like that, if you understood what I'm trying to say. But it'll do it all so well, and through any weather, through any seas.
And if you drive like a bit of a fool and take a big green one over the top, have you seen the scuppers on that foredeck? You've got the usual deck drains, and then you've got scuppers just slightly up from that. They're like that, you could stick your whole leg in it.
So however much water you take on board, it's just
straight overboard,
straight at the back.
Yeah, so I've got a lot of time for that.
Yeah, fair play.
And yeah, that was exciting.
Anything else catch your eye?
Well, yeah, it did. I like the Bayliner C21 because it's nice to see in a market where a lot of builders seem to abandon the bottom end in pursuit of higher profit margins. Understandably, they've got to make money. And Bayliner's done what Bayliner ought to be doing and introduced, we saw it can, but also in Southampton, we saw the introduction of the Bayliner C21, a little cuddy, 21 footer.
Yep.
All in, including tax, at less than 50 grand, 48,000 quid.
Yeah.
But then I went along to see the C21 at Southampton, and the package there was 63.5 grand, and I'm starting to think,
is that because we had the inboard? Did that have the inboard, the one at Southampton? Because I think you can get inboard or outboard.
No, it was the Mercury 150 there on the transom.
Okay, yeah.
But you know, of course, you could spec these things up.
Yeah.
But just the idea you can get a proper caddy, a sporting caddy for under 50 grand, it's refreshing. Isn't it?
And it didn't look cheap.
No, not at all.
I thought it felt really nicely judged.
That's right. I
Plenty of seating in the cockpit.
Yeah. Well, I think that they
decent sort of quality of fabrics and finish, and
that's right. And in borrowing some of the deck layouts and furniture modules from neighbouring boats that are already established in the Bayliner fleet, obviously they've been able to lower the price.
Well, that's one of the benefits. They're part of this big Brunswick group who actually make Mercury engines apart from anything else. So it's no surprise it's got Mercury on there. But they also do all kinds of things, sort of Boston whalers and the Quicksilvers, aren't they? And Sea Rays, and there's a big old
concern.
Big old group. But it does mean they can share resources and use a lot of the savings they make, even on the smaller, on the sort of cheaper, more affordable end of the market for things like that Bayliner C21. And it really shows.
I thought it was good, really good. But you went to have a look at the Grand Banks 54.
Yeah, slightly at the other end of the extreme.
Very much.
What a lovely bit of kit that is.
I looked at it.
It's called the Grand Banks 54. It's actually about 60 foot. I don't know why they sort of go the opposite way. Most people try and make their boat sound as big as possible. They're much more modest than that. But it's also, there's been a bit of a transition at Grand Banks of late. I think most people, when you think of Grand Banks, you think of those sort of old classic styled, originally wood, latterly composite, but quite heavy displacement or semi-displacement boats. This has a full planing V-warp hull design, and we can talk a little bit more about that later perhaps when we talk about hull designs, but it's got a full carbon superstructure and deck, carbon reinforced, relatively lightweight, full planing hull that is quite shallow at the back, so it's a quick boat. It does over 30 knots.
Bloody hell.
But it still feels every inch of Grand Banks in terms of, the interior is beautifully finished, acres of teak, solid as you like, absolute sort of bank vault doors, the thickness of them, all the engineering, beautiful sort of engine bay and lazarette. It just feels like a proper old school boat, but with all the performance and technology you'd want from a modern high-speed planing boat.
It certainly looks like a proper kind of modestly sized but proper explorer kind of yacht, doesn't it?
Some quite nice touches as well. Things like when you I don't know if you saw it, but it's got this lovely what looks like a wooden transom, classic high sheen gloss transom. In fact, it's all painted. It's not actually wood at all. It's all part of the composite build, but it's so cleverly painted. It looks like glossy teak, but of course without any of the hassle of having to varnish it and look after it and maintain it.
Yeah, I saw that done on Zealanders of the past.
Yeah,
it was Zealanders now actually, and I was wholly unconvinced by that.
What do you see? It obviously worked on you this time.
It did this time, but don't be painting bloody plastic and telling me it's wood. I don't appreciate that. Not a premium boat, but I'll let them off if they've fooled me, because Zealand did.
They fooled you, and it's a lot less hassle because you don't have to constantly strip it back and revarnish it.
It leaves me feeling.
You don't like the idea of
uncomfortable.
Well,
No, I don't.
That's only because you've been fooled, you see. You're beating yourself up.
That's partly it. That is partly it. Well, yeah, that was a bit of a star of the show, got to say.
Well, it's one of the bigger boats at the show and one of the more expensive. I think it's about 4 million quid or thereabouts.
There's some boats you look at and you think, yeah, fair enough.
I know, and weirdly, that was one of them. I'm so used to being astounded at how expensive everything is. And at least when you got on board that, you went, well, I know this is going to be expensive, so I'm not going to be surprised when it turns out that it is. Because it feels it and it looks it.
Well, let's peg it back then to 80 grand.
Right.
With Highfield's ADV 7.
Interesting boat that, wasn't it? So Highfield, best known for their aluminium ribs.
Yeah.
I think they're built in China, but really nicely done. I've always been a big fan.
So yeah,
really deeply aluminium hulls, big tubes, but the ADV 7 is different. It's not even aluminium, is it?
No, fiberglass hull and a hybrid kind of approach, as we've seen from other brands of late, where essentially they use much narrower tubes. I'm not sure they're D tubes, are they? They're actually...
No, they're just small diameter.
Yeah. So you can increase the amount of internal volume you've got to play with, because obviously that's an endemic flaw with ribs, traditional ribs, is that half of that collar just protrudes into the space and kind of narrows what you've got to play with. Yeah. Well, there's lots of space in here. And it's pretty well used, I've got to say. Proper bow lounge. Yeah. Proper aft lounge as well, and the fact that it's taken quite an unusual approach. They try to use all the day space right back to the cowling of the engine. Yeah. So what you do at the end of the day is basically take that entire aft bench and it simply folds forward to enable you
to make space to lift the engine.
Yeah, that's simple as that.
Good. Otherwise, you lose sort of 2 feet to an engine well that is pretty dead space. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen previous approaches to this kind of thing with deck runners that maybe just slide the aft bench fore and aft, but I think there's a much more practical solution actually.
Yeah. And you've still effectively got a lot of the features of a rib, so you've basically got one giant fender all the way around it, so you can bounce off other things. You've still got a bit of extra buoyancy on board, so I think it's rated, I can't remember how many people it's rated for, but it's quite a lot. It's like sort of 8 10 or something. It's a decent amount, so it's got a lot of sort of reserve buoyancy, if you like, but then you've got all that versatility of a more conventional sort of walk-around Axopar style adventure boat.
Yeah, you do, and with a 250 on a transom, you should be hitting 40 knots. You've got an optional toilet inside the console, access from the front, from the bow space, and
all for under 100 grand.
Yeah, 80 grand, I think, the starting price, the package price, so pretty good. I mean, I do look at that hull shape. I look at, because it's got a deep forefoot, essentially, a vertical plumb bow, which you wouldn't necessarily expect, certainly from that brand. But there it is. It's all the rage. It looks the part. It gives you lots of directional stability.
And extends the waterline length.
It does.
It's not really going to make any difference when you're planing.
But it's fine entry forward and narrow tubes, as we've discussed. So I look forward to getting it on the water to see whether it's a little bit wet as in a following sea, because none of those traits look particularly brilliant for those conditions. But, give it the benefit of the doubt. It looks like a lot of boat for the month.
Well, at least the tubes will help deflect the water to some degree. But it'd be really interesting to compare it against one of Highfield's own ribs, actually. Maybe see if we can do a back-to-back between a Highfield 7-metre rib and a Highfield ADV 7 and see what the pros and cons of both are.
Oh, yeah, I'm in.
Let's try and do it.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Okie doke. And one other boat before we move on, I wanted to talk about. I don't know if this is on your list. Was that North Star 49 Plus?
I had a very quick scout around it, but probably not as thoroughly as you. But that looked like a pretty full-on boat as well. Yeah,
it was. It's their biggest boat, of course. You don't tend to get boats in that offshore pilot house market going beyond around about 45, 46 foot. And actually, I think Sargo and Targa do a 45 and a 46. In fairness, Targa's 46 is also around about 49 foot.
Yep.
And the Sargo 45, I think that's about 48 foot. So this is in the same ballpark. It's big anyway. And
I think you can get a flybridge for it. Or if
you can. And what I was particularly impressed by, I mean, the owner of this boat that was at the show, it clearly has very particular tastes. And that's a good and a bad thing. On the one hand, I think he made some bad decisions with his choices, but that's up to him. He's paying for it. Yeah, he's paying for it. On the other hand, it showed me that whatever you ask Nordstar to do, they can do.
Yeah.
They're very much a kind of semi-custom builder. They can do all sorts with their spaces.
Such good options in that area of the market now between Nordstar and Sargo and Targa and Marriott's is slightly different, but you can't really go wrong with any of them. It really comes down to personal choice, what it is you want from your boat. But
yeah, it does. But one thing I was impressed with here, because, a lot of other brands in that sort of market, they use nice, big, deep, safe side decks, which is great, but the Nordstar guys use relatively narrow side decks to maximise internal volume and internal volume, and it absolutely works. And the side decks are not too small.
Yeah,
the flow of space feels great. The custom potential is exciting, and believe it or not. Well, two interesting facts about this boat, and then we'll move on. Firstly, the fly you mentioned, you can have that, and that only adds about 3.8% to the overall package price of that boat.
That feels like a bargain, doesn't it? A whole extra deck.
I know. Unbelievable. It's a proper little fly too. And the second thing is that you can equip this boat, this 49 Plus, with triple stern drives for 48 knot.
Stern drives?
48 knot performance.
Triple stern drives?
Triple stern drives, 48 knots.
I'm not sure I've ever seen that. I've seen plenty of IPS drives and outboards, but triple, that's quite cool.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it? I don't know whether they've done it. I don't know whether this 48 knots is just a kind
mythical
of calculation. Yeah, that's right. But they've sucked me in because I quoted it on camera, so I can't backtrack now. So that was exciting.
Diesel stern drives?
Yes.
Cool.
Anything else you got to add about Southampton?
Ask you more complicated questions. How many cabins has it got?
It has a lot. It does. It really does. No, it's definitely got.
I think it's.
Oh, it's 3. Yes, you've got the usual one under the dinette. You tend to get, which is impressive. It's really big. Nice big lounge section down there as well. A kind of L-shaped settee. A couple of good forward cabins. It's only one bathroom, but you take that 6 berth. Go anywhere.
One of those sort of do anything boats, isn't it? It is. Do anything, cruising, day boating, fishing, anything really. Can't get far wrong.
You can't. It's the kind of boat you buy, and that's you done with buying boats.
Yeah,
really, isn't it?
Forever boat.
Forever boat. Exactly that.
Right, that's probably enough, isn't it, for Southampton? Should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on. And
talk about now.
Well, we're going to talk about our product of the day.
Oh, yeah.
Which is marine sunglasses.
Da, da, da.
Yes, and I was quite excited about this. I mean, I can see why you're listening to me talk about marine sunglasses and you maybe switch off or don't. Because Hugo's...
I'm going to make them interesting, magically, am I?
Yeah, no, Hugo's brought a whole load of sunglasses along.
Well, I have brought a few because, let's face it, everybody needs to wear sunglasses. And it's actually a health thing as well.
Yeah.
It's not just a matter of trying to look slightly cooler or a bit less squinty.
Yeah, exactly, particularly on the water, because exactly as when we were discussing sun creams a few episodes back, you're getting double the light. The water's bouncing off surfaces, off fiberglass, off the sea surface. So it's coming at every angle. So a proper pair of shades.
Yeah,
really
damages your eyes. It strains your eyes.
Exactly.
It's important.
It makes it a little bit dangerous when you can't see a bloody thing. So a good pair of shades.
When you're driving at 50 knots in your triple stern drive boat, it helps you be able to see where you're going.
Exactly. Although I suspect in a boat like that, everyone gets out of your way, don't they?
Right, if they've got any sense.
Yeah. Marine sunglasses.
Yeah.
Right, there are a few basic things you need. You obviously need the UV protection.
Yep.
Ideally, you're going to, well, not even ideally, every pair I ever buy is polarized because that directly combats that low-level light, the refraction.
It stops the reflections, but it does have one drawback. Have you noticed the fact that certain screens you can't read properly?
Yeah.
I think most of the sort of marine brand MFDs now are viewable with polarized sunglasses, but you suddenly notice it if you pick up a certain sort of phones or tablets and you suddenly think, I can't read anything on this. And that's because the polarizing on the lens doesn't sync with whatever's on screen. So just something to look at.
Well, it is. And do you know what else you can never read when you've got polarized glasses on?
What's that then?
The bloody notice boards at airports. It's just completely black.
Why are you wearing sunglasses in an airport?
Because I lost my real glasses, so I got prescription sunglasses, so I have to wear them indoors. I even sit at home watching the telly with my sunglasses.
Well, one of those muppets that constantly wear sunglasses as if they're too important to be seen.
Well, now we've got 28 people a week watching our podcast. I feel like I'm a superstar. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it's just...
Disguise yourself to stop being spotted in the airport.
Yeah, exactly that.
I was actually spotted on an aeroplane by the captain of the aeroplane as I got on.
You're not even joking, are you?
No, I was on my way to Cannes. The captain of the aeroplane came out, stopped me, and I thought, oh, what have I done now? Turns out he just says, "Hello, Mr. Andreae. Very pleased to have you on board. I'm such a big fan of yours. Love your work." I thought, that's it. I've made it.
You have.
I'm famous. The captain of the airplane stopped me, and rather than chucking me off, which is what normally happens, he actually welcomed me on board.
Did you not mention?
No. Never heard of you.
That's so sad.
Never heard of you.
I'm still waiting for the big moment.
I didn't ask, to be fair, but you were back in economy class, weren't you? I was clearly riding up front.
Yeah,
Not.
that's how it works.
Anyway, sunglasses were
sunglasses. Yeah, we were. So, impact resistance matters. I mean, I'm a clumsy fella. I mean, if you're on a small boat, you're going to batter these things about.
Yeah.
Particularly when you take them off. It's just dropping them on the deck, getting them smashed up.
Or you put them in your pocket and sit on them. Or you've got kids who constantly try and bend the arms off or smash them to bits.
Yeah, exactly. I've owned a couple of pairs of sunglasses that were buoyant, and that was quite useful because I dropped those overboard a lot of the time. But you can also get little accessory sort of straps for to hold them on your head, and also to make them buoyant when...
Example here. So these are floating. These are made by a company called Sea Specs. They have a sort of built-in retaining strap.
That's a one-handed job, isn't it, for adjustment?
Yeah. And they are floating. I'm not sure they're the prettiest things I've ever seen, but they will do the job. They're nice wraparound design.
Let's have a little peek.
Relatively affordable. I think they're about 50 quid. But yeah, they're floating. They have got the retainer strap. They are UV filters or whatever you call them.
Right, and they're polarised.
And
they come with these sort of rubber
eyes, so they don't bounce about.
Yeah, when you're bouncing around at pace on a rough sea, it actually does hurt. Well, I've got a big old hooter, so that doesn't help.
Well, try them on. Go on, you try them.
I don't think this is going to flatter my face. I've got quite a bold face. How am I looking?
I think that works all right. You see, they've got the right sort of wraparound and they fit your face. I've got such a small, tiny face.
Well, that wraparound kind of matters as well for the light coming in top and bottom. And also, I like this. You see these little holes, top and bottom. It actually helps to demist your lenses when you're underway.
And also, if you are going quickly at 50 knots, you actually need a bit of protection from your eyes because it's trying to peel your eyelids back at that kind of speed.
Yeah, exactly that. And also, on that note, if you've ever driven a fast powerboat in the rain, you try, even if it's just spitting, a little bit of rainwater hitting you in the face at 50 knots. It's like somebody stabbing needles. It really hurts, doesn't it? Probably hurts.
Yeah. But personally, I struggle with these because I've got such a small face. They don't really work that well for me. So I have to... another company actually that's worth mentioning because I like what these do. These are a British brand. They're called Sun God. And what I like about these, a couple of things. First of all, you can fully customize them. So you can choose the frame itself, the shape of the frame. You can choose the color of the frame. You can choose the tint on the lenses.
And you know these companies that offer you different tips. I mean, they're specific, they're application driven, aren't they?
Absolutely. So it's slightly depending if you want to view better in low light, or if you want maximum sun absorption or reduction or glare reduction or whatever.
And there are lenses for fishermen as well, aren't
they? They're meant for fishermen, and of course, what particular color you think looks most stylish on you. You see, that looks quite good on you too. But they are big. If you put those on my face. You'll see that I suddenly have a tiny face and they look vast on me. You see, you can't even say. But the other thing I like about these, the thing I like most of all, is that they have a lifetime guarantee on them. So regardless of whether a component fails, or I'm told that even if you sit on them, they will either repair or replace it. And they've had done over 8,300 repairs to date from people who've sent them back and just keep on going.
That's amazing. It really doesn't sound like a good business model though, does it? Really?
Well, it's hard to know, but they've been around a few years. So I like to think that they're doing well. And I like the fact that they're a British brand.
That's cool.
Doing a marine specific, well, it's sort of activity specific. I think they were sponsors of UK sailing for a while.
I mean, Sun God Sierras.
Sun God Sierras, they do various different styles, but yeah, you can fully customize them. Even the little badges in the corner, you can choose whether they're silver or titanium or goodness knows what. But
well, that's super cool. You know, there used to be Ray-Ban, who everyone knows as quite a cool manufacturer of glasses. Well, they used to do I forget what they're called, flips or clips or something, that they used to have interchangeable lenses, so you could
Oh yeah,
do you remember those? So you could buy the frames and they come with a set of lenses for your chosen application. I'm not sure they do them anymore, but they were superb.
I don't know, clever idea. The other thing I discovered, which I thought was quite fun, is on the Oakley website you can do a virtual try-on. So it'll take a photograph of your face on the screen, and then you can virtually try on all their different sort of frame styles and sizes and change the colour of the lenses or whatever and see what suits. It's a bit weird, and I'm not sure if it takes into account that some people's faces are just bigger and rounder and different shaped to others, but it gives you some idea.
Did you actually order from the Oakley website on a basis?
No, because I looked too scary, and they're too expensive. I'm far too tight to buy a proper pair of Oakleys.
Well, I did the same on the Specsavers, and I was impressed with the virtual try-on facility, but what arrived,
Slightly different.
It's a little bit. I thought I looked just superb on screen.
You see that?
And when it turned up,
it's probably got some clever software that makes you look much more handsome.
I did look a bit Clooney, actually. Oh, that's good. Oh,
that must have been some serious software.
No, hardcore, innit?
So I'm so tight, I end up buying something like these, which are a pair of block sunglasses.
Yeah.
They make them in a sort of small enough size to fit my tiny little face.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that they're fairly unbreakable. They're not expensive. They're sort of 35, 40 quid. They're still UV filtered and all that. They sit very nicely on your head when you don't need them. And if you do sit on them, 35 quid, don't mind that much.
It's not a disaster, is it? But actually, while I've got Ray-Ban in mind, I'll mention something else. They do a range of clip-ons, so you can transform your glasses into a set of Ray-Bans.
And end up looking like some kind of 70s car dealer.
Yeah.
Flip up.
Or worse.
I don't want to go there.
Oh, no, I don't think you do. But I think there's a confidence in having the balls to wear those puppies. I think you should get involved.
Definitely brave. I do have one quite nice pair, and I have treated myself, but I don't use these on the boat because they're too precious.
Yeah, these are Maui Jims, aren't they?
Maui Jims, and they are rather lovely. And I have to say, you do notice the difference because just the quality of, I don't know whether it's glass, polycarbonate or what, but they are so much clearer and cleaner, and they just make the world look like a better place.
Yeah, I tried them on. Everything's golden, isn't it?
Yeah. Everything suddenly just looks that much prettier and higher contrast and all the rest, but they're reserved for my driving.
They are beautiful. I'm a bit jealous.
Cheap stuff.
They are expensive. But there's one brand, one specific pair actually I want to mention, because you mentioned loss and breakage, and let's face it, when you get sunglasses, you just, as I mentioned, I'm clumsy. I lose stuff, I break stuff, and you end up buying 20 pairs a season. Well, Times is a British eyewear company. I only became aware of them maybe a year ago. They got a couple of models out, the Rome and the Seek. Now, the Times Seek, that looks like some sort of weird Harry Potter on steroids design. I'm not a fan at all. Maybe it's because I'm not cool or young. Maybe kids would love them. But the Times Rome sunglasses, same principle in terms of the technicalities, look superb. And the idea is that they're hinge free. So,
how does that work?
Well, the trouble is, Hugo, I got in contact with Times and said, look, fellas, send us a pair so I can see them in the flesh and see how they work. And they refused for the sake of these things retail at 115 quid. And it seems like
dig out your own pocket and get some.
I'm not going to do that.
What is the idea? How does it fold up then if you haven't got hinges?
Well, I assume it's not so much a conventional hinge as a sort of rotating.
It folds flat. I have seen that. Yeah. So the arms sort of rotate up. So they sit flat, and then you've got a retaining strap and they sort of hang flat against your chest.
Flat against your chest. Yeah. Exactly that. Yeah. And I think the retaining strap you can then just use as a neck strap.
Yeah.
And you can operate it one-handed on your head, of course. It just stays in place. So you're not going to lose them. Designed in Britain, built in Italy. I'm going to read this off my screen because I'll get the name wrong. But Mazzucchelli frames. Mazzucchelli, apparently that's quite.
They're my favourite.
Posh.
As if that means anything to anyone.
Well, Zeiss.
That means something to someone.
As standard.
Okay, all right. I'll buy into that.
Yeah, and they look magnificent. I can't vouch for them firsthand because Times won't send me any. See, what would have happened had you sent me some? I could have been showing people how cool these things are. I suspect from what I've read and what I've written and the pictures I've seen and the reports I've seen, from reviewers, they're top class.
And 100 quid sounds about right for a nice bit of kit with Zeiss lenses.
Exactly.
Doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah.
You're not paying too much of a premium for the name there, are you?
No, you're not. And that to me looks about as practical as a pair of marine shades could realistically be.
Good stuff. Well, I think we've covered that fairly comprehensively, or as much as our limited knowledge is going to allow us to. So shall we move on?
Let's move on. And we're going to move on to our issue of the day, which is really going to expose our limited knowledge. And that is hulls, hull design, planing hulls, displacement hulls, semi-displacement hulls. Now I've got a vague sense in my mind that actually this is all just a factor of age and outlook. So you start off with something fast, a fast planing hull, because you fancy yourself as a bit of a contender when you're a young man and everywhere has got to be 100 miles an hour. And then you go to semi-displacement because you think, well, I could save a bit of money when I'm going at displacement speed, and then maybe I could speed up a bit if the weather catches me. And then you get older, think, oh, displacement all the way. I'm just going to cruise at 6 knots because I like to be comfortable and slow. So what are your thoughts?
I think that's a bit of a limited overview, but yeah, I mean, perhaps we ought to sort of go into a little bit of the technicalities first to describe. So displacement hull means that essentially you're pushing your way through the water. You're not trying to climb on top of it or go quickly over it.
Yeah, essentially you've got to displace the massive
so you are displacing
in order to
the water.
One.
Now that has a number of sort of fairly distinctive pros and cons. I think on the plus side, it means it doesn't really matter how heavy your boat is. You can get away with a relatively small engine because the laws of displacement means that however much power, you're not going to be able to go faster than, there's a very specific equation, which I have to remind myself exactly what it is, but I did actually write it down here. So it's 1.34 times the square root of the waterline length. So that is the law of displacement. So it's entirely related to the length of the boat, the waterline length of the boat. So the longer the boat is, the faster you can go, but ultimately it's still not very fast. So a kind of 50-foot boat, you're likely to be doing around about, I haven't written it down yet. Oh, well, for example, an Arxon 85 should do about 12 knots at an 85-foot boat. If it's a 50-foot boat, it's going to be more like sort of 9, 10 knots. And that is a law that is hard to defy, not impossible to defy, but hard to defy. So basically, you're going relatively slowly, but it's very comfortable. It's fairly fuel efficient, as long as you don't mind going at a slow speed. It means you can build it as heavy as you like, so you can have a steel boat, or you can even have a concrete boat, whatever you like. Round bilge. The cons, obviously, it takes a while to get anywhere. Tends to be a round bilge, so it tends to be a little bit rolly at sea, particularly any kind of beam sea. Can be a bit seasickness inducing. Can now sort of counteract that to a degree with stabilizers. You can certainly mitigate it with either sort of gyro or particularly fins, quite effective at that kind of speed. Semi-displacement or semi-planing, I don't think there's really a difference between them, but as it sounds, it's a kind of halfway house. So you tend to have slightly finer bow sections, so you can push through the water a bit quicker, and slightly shallower, flatter aft sections, so you get a certain amount of lift at the stern. And that does mean you can probably go sort of cruise at speeds more like sort of 15, 20, maybe even 25 if you put big enough engines in. Pros of that is you get a very soft ride because you're not slamming at all. You're just pushing through the water. It also means you've got a greater sort of cruising speed range. You can cruise very comfortably at sort of 5 knots, but you can cruise equally comfortably at 15, 20, whatever your engines allow. Some of the downsides are that they tend to be quite heavy on fuel. You need big engines to push it through the water. They can ride a little bit bow up because you haven't got a huge amount of lift at the back, so you're tending to sort of push through with a slightly bow up attitude. Can be a little bit noisy because of the big engines again. But it's a sensible compromise between the two. You get a lot of advantages of both and only a few downsides. But typical examples might be, well, in fact, the boat we're on now is a semi-displacement boat. So, comfortable cruising at 20 knots or so. There are other things like Beneteau Swift trawlers. Dales are a sort of famous British brand.
It's interesting you mentioned Dale because I went down to, Falmouth to test the new Rustler 41. And as you know, Rustler's got a long sailing heritage. So when they were looking at making their first ever powerboat, they were thinking about semi-displacement along the lines of a Dale.
It's that sort of classic gentleman's launch, and you kind of expect it, because they're famously, very good seakeeping. Tends to, just be very solid and stable through the water.
Right,
it suits that style of boat to some degree.
It does, and they were going down that line. It was in development for about 5 years, but they spoke to Tony Castro, the designer, and he was saying, look, with about this length, you might want to go planing rather than semi-displacement. Firstly, it differentiates it from the likes of Dale, but also it means that you can go with a fatter, more voluminous hull forward. And he quite rightly points out that once you're planing, that's above the surface anyway. So it's not a particular issue. And on a boat of limited scale, like a 41-footer, that forward volume's relatively important. So it's an interesting design decision we went with that thing.
And they're not the only ones. Grand Banks have done the same. But so a planing hull, essentially the difference is that overtakes its own bow wave. It lifts up over the bow wave and then settles down on top of it. That enables it to go much quicker because you've got less drag. It's more fuel efficient in terms of cruising at speed because you're not trying to push or pull so much boat through the water. You're skimming across the top to some degree. You get a certain amount of dynamic stability because once you're up and planing, you tend to have fairly flat aft sections, so it's less prone to roll. Downsides are that when you are at displacement speed, it tends to sort of wander around a bit because you haven't got a central keel, so it can be a little bit flighty when you're on a waterway at slow speed.
It can be annoying.
Yeah, you get blown around the marina because you've got a bit less hull in the water. You haven't got anything to sort of keep you planted. So distinctive pros and cons, but nearly all sports boats are planing, for example. Anything that's going to be going much above 20 knots tends to be planing, particularly if it's a small boat, because it's just that much more efficient and it allows you to go quicker with, you still need moderate power, but you don't need as much power as you need for a semi-planing boat, which you really need a lot of grunt to push it through the water.
Yeah, driven sensibly, a well-sorted, well-balanced planing boat can be relatively efficient to run. Obviously it plummets when you put the revs on and really increase pace, and also plummets when you get into the higher size range where, weight, sheer bulk becomes more difficult to elevate.
Absolutely. And in order to be able to sit on top of the water, it needs to be relatively light.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the downsides are that when you're going on top of the water at speed, you're much more prone to slamming. And that's the thing that people don't like, is when the boat bounces up and down, it's really quite a hard impact.
It is. I don't think people quite appreciate how hard it can be. It's an interesting thing though, because of course you want a boat to be light, but I'm also, with a planing hull, I'm a bit of a fan of weight. I think it helps.
Up to a point.
To a point, yeah. The reality is that you can do pretty much whatever you like with the V. Obviously making the V more acute makes the re-entry less of an impact.
Yes, that's the idea, and that's why everybody talks about these deep V hulls. And a traditional deep V hull maintains the same dead rise angle. So the dead rise angle is basically the sharpness of the V. Yeah. And a true deep V hull will stay the same all the way from the bow to the transom. And usually anything above about 20 degrees is referred to as a deep V. The downside of that is that you need more power to push it through the water. Because of those deep aft sections, you haven't got as much lift. So most boats now have what you call a modified or a variable V that starts off quite acute up at the bow so that you're cutting through the waves, and then flattens off at the stern to give more lift, and that means you can get away with less power but still get good speed and better fuel efficiency. Yeah, indeed. But you and I, we both tested a few boats of differing build materials. You've tested a few carbon fibre boats. I have too. A few very lightweight aluminium boats. And the reason I say that I enjoy a bit of weight is that because although it's very easy to get some of these boats up onto the plane, and in the case of carbon fibre, the hull's extremely stiff, well, that re-entry, however deep that V is, if it's really light, it does just hurt a bit. It does. And a little bit of weight, well placed, mitigates that to a degree. Yeah, and weirdly, that's where a sort of carbon hull, it's so stiff that it can actually transmit that impact more directly. So sometimes a little bit of flex is not a bad thing. That's right. But actually, much as I love fast boats and I love to have a play and a bit of a thrill ride, some of my favourite boat tests have been on much more gentle boats. I remember that Delphia 10 sedan that I went and had a play with. Round about the Thames, wasn't it? I think down at what's the name of the dealer down there? Is it Ting Ding? Ting Ding. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had a little play. We had I think 110 horsepower single shaft on that boat, and it's a very substantial boat.
Full displacement.
And the figures we were getting from that day basically suggest to me that if you had a full day on the water, if you were perhaps 5 hours at anchor and you did the other 5 hours cruising at sort of 5-6 knots from place to place, then you in total would consume less than 10 litres of fuel. And that is a day out, isn't it?
I know, and I'm with you. You kind of need to do it to experience it. But actually, there is something really enjoyable about enjoying the passage itself. You don't have to race everywhere at sort of 25 knots, only to drop the hook and you get an extra 5 minutes at anchor. Sometimes it's really lovely to just take it gently, enjoy the view. It's obviously there's less noise. Yeah. You're not running so fast, or you have smaller engines in the first place. It's very gentle. It's quite soporific. You don't spill your drink. You can eat en route. You can even sleep en route. You know, on a proper long-range explorer yacht, you can just carry on cruising through the night. So there's a lot to be said for it. And I agree, you know, maybe it is a certain sort of coming of age thing that everything slows down a little bit and you suddenly enjoy the more chilled, relaxed process of going boating rather than racing around everywhere.
Yeah, but at the same time, it is nice to have the capacity to just go a little faster, just to outrun the weather, or if you're late, to get back ashore. You know, and I'm thinking in particular about the latest one I tried, is the Hardy 45 Euro semi-displacement. You know, and that's a proper offshore hull, but it's the kind of hull where you could quite happily cruise along at 6, 7, 8, 9 knots as well. Yeah, nice and flat, in complete comfort, with lots of running efficiency. Yeah. So you could use that inland very contentedly, and they know that. That's why I call it the Euro. So you can, you know, fold down the arch on top. You know, it's very low slung, get under European waterways, bridges. So that's the kind of boat. You can go fast, you can go slow, you can go frugal. You can
but you know
what's
starting to become a bit of a trend is this fast displacement idea. Have you come across this?
Yeah.
So essentially a fast displacement hull effectively allows you to cheat that formula that I talked about earlier. And by having a very fine entry and a very shallow hull, sort of low displacement at the back, you can actually cheat the laws of physics to a certain degree, and you can get a full displacement boat to outrun its theoretical displacement speed. So, for example, that Arxon 85 I mentioned earlier, the theoretical speed of that is a maximum of 12 knots. It'll actually do kind of 14 or 15. Yeah. And there are sort of other boats. There's something called a Jetton or Yachting Beach that's a full fast displacement hull, and that was doing something like 20 knots, but it was actually going through the water at 20 knots rather than up and over it. And it's a really bizarre feeling. It sort of goes against all your previous experience and principles, but it stays absolutely dead flat. It doesn't come out of the water. It just chunters straight through.
Is it very heavily powered?
No, not particularly massive. I can't remember what the engines were, but it is a specific hull design. And there's a Dutch naval architect called Van Oosenen who specifically sort of pioneer this fast displacement hull form. And they've done it on great big sort of Hasten's super yachts. And there are various other people. Nigel Irons sort of famously did it with his low displacement to length ratio range boats. They're essentially sort of very long, thin, narrow boats. A bit like if you imagine a rowing 8, you know, they're so long and thin that they don't obey the normal laws of displacement physics because they barely sort of ruffle the water as they go through. And it's basically adapting the same principle, albeit on a slightly larger, more meaningful boat that has a useful amount of volume in it. But there are ways of cheating the law and having the sort of benefits of a full displacement boat with all the kind of fuel efficiency that allows and all the comfort, but just being able to push the boundaries a little bit. And the other thing I think that has fundamentally changed the game is the arrival of stabilizers, you know, active stabilizing systems.
Yeah, definitely.
That can make even round bilge displacement hulls be remarkably stable and comfortable. It pretty much kills off, you know, any of those worries about seasickness because they're pretty rock steady with them, even at anchor. You know, the zero speed gyro stabilizers means they're pretty much rock stable even at anchor. So that has got rid of a lot of the sort of disadvantages of slow round bilge hull forms, and likewise things like fast displacement hulls get around some of the speed issues. So there are ways of cheating almost all of it. And I mentioned earlier the Grand Banks 85 has something called a V-warp hull design, which is essentially a full planing hull with a very fine front section, and that is nearly always immersed, so it cuts through the waves and prevents the slamming. But then it shallows out to a very low displacement very shallow V at the back. But because the boat is sort of long enough and has that fine entry, it doesn't seem to slam at all. It's built absolutely rock solid, so it feels completely robust, and yet it'll do kind of 30 knots, but equally comfortable chuntering along at sort of 7-8 knots using its Humphrey fin stabilizers to keep it steady. So you can pretty much go anywhere you like. I don't think there's a definitive sort of winner or loser in this particular issue. It's just what you favor and what you're likely to do more of. Are you going to spend most of your time at displacement speed or most of it at planing speed?
Yeah, it still kind of pays into the idea that you and I discussed our ideal boats, if we could have any. Your ideal boat is multiple boats, isn't it? Still, even now, even though there's overlaps.
Well, I'd still like a small, fast, high-speed planing sports boat, but increasingly, I do think actually I could very happily live the remainder of my days out on some nice displacement boat, pottering around the world's oceans at 7-8 knots. Yeah,
same here. Though it's worth mentioning because I've been on a few boats with people who clearly don't really know how to handle a planing boat. That
what you're saying?
That nothing to do with you, Hugo. Honestly, that it's worth investing time and effort in developing the skills to trim your legs, to use your tabs, to make the thing run flat. Yeah. Because if you're ploughing the bow on a planing vessel, you're pinning back the revs, you're pegging back the speed, and you're drinking fuel for fun for no reason at all, and it's deeply uncomfortable. Yeah. So
learn how to drive it, learn to use your trim tabs.
Yeah.
Make sure, take some figures on your boat. It's worth doing it to find out where it is most efficient, because you can save a lot of fuel by running at whatever it is, 21, 22 knots rather than 25, 26, or rather than sort of 16, 17. You'll often find that a planing boat is most efficient a little bit faster than you might think. It's usually sort of somewhere between 20 and 25 knots.
Yeah, that's
and actually with some IPS boats, it's sometimes sort of 25 to 30 knots. So it's really worth doing the sums, working out speed versus fuel consumption to work out which is the most economical cruising speed.
Exactly so. Well put. Well, I think we've done holes to death, have we not?
I think we've probably bored everybody to sleep by now, so
right.
Probably call a halt there.
All right, well, as ever, we'd love to hear from your experiences, so please do get in touch and let us know what you think about the issue of the day. In the meantime, that's it from us. That's the end of podcast number 13.
Yep, unlucky 13.
Exactly. We'll see you next week for luckier 14.
Excellent. See you then.